You want to know if HRT is the reason my body looks like this at 50? I'm going to answer that honestly, and part of that answer is probably going to disappoint you because HRT did not do what most people think it does. If you're waiting on it to fix your body, you're going to be waiting for a very long time. So I'm going to tell you what actually changed for me, what did not change at all, and the one thing that finally moved the needle, which had nothing to do with a prescription. Quick thing before we get started, I'm not a doctor and this is not medical advice. This is my story and exactly how it happened, and it includes the things I got wrong. And I'm telling it because you keep asking. It's one of the most common questions that gets asked to me in my comments. I went through this window myself while I was coaching hundreds of women through the very same one. So I've seen it from both sides. And what I've seen does not match what you've been sold online.
And make a plan. Let's have ourselves a date. No promises.
Let me take you all the way back to when I turned 46. Some of the symptoms that I was dealing with were pretty major and life-altering. There were 3 specific symptoms that were impacting me the most. I was 46 years old, and one of the things that was very difficult for me was sleep. I could not stay asleep to save my life. I would do everything under the sun to get a better night's sleep. I would take melatonin, I would take magnesium, a cold room, lavender, essential oils, you name it, I tried it. And no matter what, I could fall asleep, but I couldn't stay asleep. I'd usually wake up at the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. hour, and some nights I would toss and turn for hours. And I just thought I was a bad sleeper. I didn't really correlate it to menopause or hormones or anything like that. I just literally categorized myself as a bad sleeper. But the poor sleep that I was getting impacted every other aspect of my life. It impacted my ability to handle stress, my desire to go to the gym, my mood, just everything. Like, it was the biggest impact on why I was spiraling out of control in so many other areas of my life. It was directly correlated with weight gain, with low activity, with low motivation. You know, I wasn't as excited to hit my macros or get in a step goal. It impacted everything. So sleep was major. But this next one was the one that was life-changing. And this is the symptom that made me realize I need to do something about this. And it was bladder leakage. At first, it was just when maybe I would sneeze or laugh. Like, I couldn't make any false moves without like making sure my legs were crossed and I could bear down, or else I would have some leakage. So that's how it started. But it got to a point where it wasn't even a movement or a laugh or a sneeze or a cough that would lead to the leakage. It would just like be a slow leak constantly. There was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't control it anymore. Crossing my legs didn't help. I just, at any given time, could look down and realize like, oh, I've leaked enough to where it shows through my pants. That was very debilitating to my life. I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't really want to go anywhere where I wasn't going to be able to constantly go to the bathroom to drain my bladder. And I would like sit on the toilet and like lean all the way forward to try to drain it as much as possible. I also found myself not drinking water or any fluids for that matter, because I did not want my bladder to leak. At one point, which was the turning point for me, was I was at the time, I was big into Orange Theory, which that's a whole other topic for another video. But I was big into Orange Theory. I could not get through an Orange Theory class without going to the bathroom 5 or 6 times during the class, and the leakage would still happen. So one time I came into my car. I knew I had leaked, but I didn't know how bad it was. And I looked down at my legs and realized that my leggings were wet all the way down to my knees. It was so bad. And at that point, it just impacted every aspect of my life. I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything. I tried wearing padded underwear, pads, everything. Nothing really helped because it's a whole different ballgame when it's urine and a constant steady flow of urine. And I know that's TMI, but it was terrible. So that particular symptom is what led me to go to the doctor. At this time, with both the sleep and the trickle effect that the sleep had, which was weight gain, poor mood, all that stuff, then the bladder leakage, I didn't actually realize I was in menopause. I did not realize that these were hormonal symptoms that I was dealing with and that they had a potential solution. So I went to the doctor, explained my symptoms, had my blood work done, and I indeed was in full-blown menopause. I hadn't had a cycle in a year. It had been 1 year, and honestly, I kind of lost sight of that because halfway through me not having a cycle, my mom passed away, and that kind of took over everything in my life. And I think that a lot of the symptoms that were really attributed to my hormones, I kind of assumed it had to do with grief. And so, yeah, those are the symptoms that got me to go to the doctor and take some action. I mean, the crazy part is I didn't actually, I don't know, even though I knew about menopause at the time, I just didn't think it was going to impact me. But I think that when it comes to menopausal symptoms, especially because in hindsight, I was in perimenopause since I was 42. So this has been a gradual lead up for years. Even the bladder leakage, even the poor sleep, it gradually got to this place where it was really detrimental to my life. But because it was so gradual, it's almost like your baseline for feeling good changes, those goalposts move. So, sleeping 5 hours a night and waking up in the middle of the night was a good night's sleep for me because it's better than sleeping 4 hours. So it's kind of like my baseline for what felt good changed. So luckily for me, I had the extreme bladder symptom because that was so detrimental to even me just living my life, living a normal life, that it forced me to go to the doctor and start asking myself these hormonal questions. Because before that, I felt like everything else was manageable and I was trying to do all of the things to manage them. Like I said, with the melatonin, cool sheets, all of that, drinking less water, wearing padded underwear. I was trying to manage everything until it just became unmanageable. If you're somewhere in this right now, I want to know. I feel like there are so many different experiences women have with menopause, and mine can be so entirely different than someone else's. So let me know where you're at in the comments. I read and respond to every single comment, and I'm genuinely curious as to what was that big thing in menopause that really was detrimental to your life, and did you have that same experience? So here I was, dealing with, like I said, the lack of sleep and the weight gain and the lack of training and all of that led into, and then the bladder leakage. I literally just tried to manage all of those things with over-the-counter options, right? So, and it honestly just made it worse. It made me more depressed, more anxious, more recluse. The self-management was no longer working. Once I realized I was actually in menopause, then I started to do my own research. I asked my doctor, my general practitioner, if HRT was an option for me, and she was anti-HRT. Luckily, it's changed a lot since then, but she said basically symptom management. She offered me antidepressants and something for sleep and an over-the-counter supplement. I definitely was not interested in those options, but once I realized I was in menopause, that made me decide to dive in and research what my options were to kind of come out of it and deal with these debilitating symptoms. Before I actually got to the point where I was going to explore HRT, just knowing that I was in menopause helped me to kind of manage the symptoms better instead of just kind of thinking they were in my head. So I realized, okay, I'm in menopause, therefore, I have put on weight. I've been skipping the gym, my energy's low. So I kind of turned up the heat on myself, on my adherence to tracking macros and going to the gym even if I felt crappy. And I became more aware of the fact that I was losing some of those habits. So without starting any supplementation or any HRT, I decided to kind of like lock back into my habits to try to get the weight off, for one, because I had gained about 15 pounds, and just to try to like feel better overall. And I was able to get the weight off, which was interesting because I was able to lose the weight that I gained in menopause before I ever started HRT. But I still just didn't feel great. So even though macros still worked, and it was harder to get myself to go get workouts in, but if I did get the workouts in, I did track my macros, it did still work. But it was definitely harder to adhere to those good habits with all of the side effects bearing down on me. But after a few months of that, and actually once I was even able to get the weight off, I decided to explore my HRT options. And that what that entailed was some more extensive hormonal testing, very comprehensive lab work. And then I looked into my options for optimizing my hormones. And this was about, for context, I found out I was in menopause in May, and I actually went on HRT, I believe November 1st was when I started my HRT protocol, which for me was estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone. So once I started taking the hormones, one of the first things that I noticed was that I started putting on weight immediately. And my weight was just going up by like a pound a week for like the first 5 weeks. And like I had said, I was pretty excited because I had managed to lose the menopause weight. And I freaked out at first, and I thought to myself like, oh my God, I'm gonna stop this. It's not worth it. I'm so glad that I did not do that. Hormones impact water balance in the body. They're gonna throw off that balance. They're gonna impact the scale. If you're tracking your macros, you're getting your workouts in, you do not have to worry. It does not put fat on your body if you are managing your intake. So I knew that I wasn't overeating. I knew that I wasn't in a calorie surplus, so the weight was not true weight. But it's so important to talk about because I wasn't expecting that. And I think most people would probably stop taking the hormones because they would panic at that, the rapid weight gain that you may or may not experience. But I definitely did experience it. It leveled out after about 4 to 6 weeks, and then it came back down. I would say I was so preoccupied by that weight gain, I wasn't even really paying attention to what was improving. But one of the things that improved for me almost immediately was sleep quality. And like I said earlier in the video, sleep quality impacted many other aspects of my life: mood, motivation, desire to work out, desire to even stick to my macros to begin with. So that was huge, and it was an immediate positive impact. And even if that was the only benefit at all, that in and of itself was worth it for me. Even to this day, I'm still a great sleeper. I sleep 7 to 9 hours every single night. This is now 4 years later. Over the course of the few months, I did feel like it impacted my ability to put on muscle. I started to feel like I could get fit again, like that fit, toned look. Now, I will say, in hindsight, it's not necessarily that the hormones help you put on muscle, but it was like the trickle effect of me being able to get more consistent again in the gym, and with my macros and all of that, it kind of like was a package deal, right? So it was like the consistency that came from my symptoms being alleviated that led to me being able to make positive impact in my body. But it was more so my actions than it was the hormones. Because I can tell you what did not change. And I think that oftentimes HRT is kind of sold as like some magic thing that's gonna make you lean and fit and lose the weight you gained automatically from the menopause, and that like all of your problems are gonna be solved. But it did not make me lean. It did not build muscle for me. It did not fix my nutrition consistency. And it did not do a single thing to my body composition on its own. Like I said, I hear so many people say like, I started HRT and it did nothing for me. Because HRT without actions and habits will do nothing for you. It will absolutely not impact the areas in your life that I think people think it's going to impact. If you're taking HRT because you think taking it is going to change your body, it will not do that. It requires the actions, the same lifestyle, the workouts, the same nutrition compliance that worked for me even before I started taking the HRT. And now that I'm at where I'm at, I can tell you that the biggest impact to what actually changed my body and got me to this place where I am now leaner and more fit and more muscular than I have been in my entire life at 50 years old. And the biggest impact to those things were what I've done in the past year, not what I've done in the past 4 years since I started HRT. Because even on HRT, I fell into some of my old habits with not training for muscle growth and not eating enough when it came to my nutrition. And my body slid back into those pre-menopause, pre-HRT look. So last summer, I literally, on HRT, felt like my body looked like it did when I first discovered I was in menopause. So even with HRT on board, because I wasn't following these things that I'm gonna go into with you, my body was not where I wanted it to be. So what actually changed my body was stabilizing my intake and actually getting my body to a place where I was not constantly chasing fat loss or a smaller version of myself. That needed to happen before I started any kind of process to try to lose body fat. Yes, I wanted to lose body fat. I found myself last year very skinny fat, and I needed to change that. So I stabilized my intake, got it to a healthier place, and then I started to slowly increase my intake over time. And while I was doing that, I focused on building muscle. And I did that for a period of 4 months before I ever thought about losing body fat again. So my metabolism was very stable, in a good place. I was eating a lot, and I had put on a significant amount of muscle. Then I focused on fat loss. So I did that for about 3 months and was able to kind of lean out, reveal what I built. And honestly, the biggest impact I had was when I came out of that fat loss and went into maintenance again, which is I brought my calories up to maintenance, where I wasn't targeting fat loss, I wasn't gaining weight, but kind of staying the same. And then I just have been focused purely on building muscle. And I've been in that place from February until now, which now it is August. So I have been in a place where I'm staying in maintenance and putting on muscle for the last 5 or 6 months. What moved the needle the most? Lifting with intention, like the intention of specifically tracking my lifts and getting stronger in specific exercises week over week. That has been the most impactful in changing my body and growing my muscles. And the most important thing is consistency, like just staying extremely consistent with my training, with my nutrition targets, and making those just a non-negotiable part of my life. So the most important thing that I changed was eating more and working out with intention. It's the same thing that I coach my clients through, because it's one of the most common things I see women do is they don't eat enough to fuel their body for muscle growth, and then they don't do effective workouts for muscle growth. What I would say to a woman who is on the fence about HRT, go get labs done just to see where you're at. You have no idea, even if you're still having a cycle, if you feel like you might be in perimenopause, get your labs done. Go to a trusted provider and ask a lot of questions. Remember, you are allowed to advocate for yourself. Most women are taught that they just kind of need to listen to their doctor and not push back, but push back. If you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling optimized, if you feel like there's room for improvement, then push back and make sure that you're heard. But remember, HRT is a tool for how you feel. It, in and of itself, will not change the way you look. I need you to understand that. And another thing that's very important This is a decision between you and your doctor, not a decision between you and some YouTube videos that you watch. It is a very important decision and very individual. I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. And if you're interested in how to look and feel your best in midlife, how to structure your nutrition, fitness tips, shop, grocery hauls, and all of that stuff, then make sure you subscribe to my channel and check out one of my other videos. And yeah, let's communicate in the comments, and I hope to see you in a new video.